Hey there everyone, how's it going? This is Waj, and in this video we're doing a direct head-to-head comparison between the iPhone 6 Plus and the Nexus 6 from Motorola. Now these are the two big phones that a lot of people are going to be interested in. This is kind of the pure experience of both what Apple has to offer and both of what Google and Motorola has to offer. So if you're interested in getting one of these smartphones or just seeing how they kind of compare against each other, this is a perfect comparison for you. So without any further ado, let's get right into this video. Now, as you can see over here, both of these phones have really large displays, and because of that, they are going to have a larger overall footprint. However, side by side, you can see that the iPhone 6 Plus is a little bit smaller, both in terms of width and height, measuring only about 158.1 millimeters in terms of its height, and about 77.8 millimeters in terms of its width. The Nexus 6 measures about 159.3 millimeters in terms of its height, and about 83 millimeters in terms of its width. If you take a look at the profiles between these two phones, you certainly can see that the iPhone 6 Plus is quite a bit thinner than the Nexus 6, measuring only about 7.1 millimeters versus 10.1 millimeters on the Nexus 6. And in terms of weight, again, we have the iPhone 6 being a little bit lighter, measuring only about 172 grams, versus the Nexus 6 measures about 184 grams. Now, even though there is a present difference between the thickness and weight of these two phones, I think ergonomically they both feel very solid in the hand. You can see that the 6 Plus's edges are all nicely rounded off, so it feels pretty comfortable in the hand. But in terms of comfortability, I do have to give it to the Nexus 6. It has this very nice supple curve at the back of the phone, and it has a very nice textured grip as well, which makes holding the phone a lot more easier. However, that curved back does present an Achilles heel, because basically when you're lying it flat on the desk, it's very difficult to actually use the Nexus 6. So if you do a lot of texting or messaging back and forth on a flat surface, you are going to have an issue with the Nexus 6 wobbling around all over the place. Now, the chassis on the iPhone 6 Plus is made out of 100% aluminum, which feels very nice and very premium. The Nexus 6 is made out of polycarbonate plastics, and it has a surrounding metal band, which also feels very nice. But one problem that gets presented with a all aluminum smartphone is that it is a little bit slippery to hold. So if you have butterfingers, you might have some issues with that. Now, one cool thing about the 6 Plus that we didn't mention so far is the Touch ID system, which is the fingerprint scanner integrated into the home button. I think this is probably one of the best implementations of a fingerprint scanner on a smartphone right now. It works really well. You can scan your finger in really any orientation, and the phone does an excellent job of quickly recognizing your fingerprint and unlocking the device or using it as your password, and is very seamlessly integrated. Unfortunately, we do not have a fingerprint scanner on the Nexus 6, so you do have to input passwords and everything like that just traditionally with the keyboard. The other handy feature on the 6 Plus is the one-hand operation mode. So you can basically double tap on the home button and your screen will drop down and make it easier to use the phone using one hand, and you don't have to extend your thumb too far away to basically access most of the regions of the phone. So it's definitely a well-integrated feature, both in terms of hardware and software. Now, unfortunately, we do not have any one-hand operation mode on the Nexus, but one thing is kind of nice is they have moved the volume and power standby button a little bit more to the middle of the actual phone, so it's easier to grab with your thumb when you're using it with one hand. Now, in terms of screen dimensions, the Nexus 6 is about 18% larger in terms of overall screen size, measuring about 5.96 inches versus 5.5 inches on the 6 Plus side. But one thing I definitely have to give to the Nexus 6 is that even though the footprint is not that much bigger as we saw previously, they definitely managed to fit quite a large screen into that. And you can see that the bezels on it are a little bit thinner than what you would find on the iPhone 6 Plus. Now, at center stage, you can see that both displays offer an excellent viewing experience. But when we get into specifics, you can see that the Nexus 6 definitely offers quite a bit more than what the iPhone 6 Plus can offer. Basically, in terms of the overall screen technology, we're using an LED backlit LCD panel that has IPS technology on the iPhone, and the Nexus 6 uses organic LED technology for its display. Furthermore, in terms of resolution, we have Quad HD standard on the Nexus 6, measuring about 2560 by 14 1440, giving it a very impressive PPI count, about 493 versus 401 PPI on the iPhone 6 Plus, which uses a 1920 by 1080 screen. One cool thing about the 6 Plus, though, it does have a polarizing layer on top of the glass, so it reduces a little bit of light glare that you would get from sunlight and things like that. So it's pretty good in viewing in different lighting conditions. It also has an oleophobic screen, so when you first get it, it's really good in terms of keeping fingerprints off the device. But eventually that oleophobic layer will fade away, and you'll be left with a screen covered in fingerprints like every other smartphone. Now, from what I can gather in my personal experience, I think both phones offer excellent viewing experiences on their displays. They're certainly the highlight of having a big, large screen smartphone. But the one thing is for sure, if you want the better display, there's no question about it, the Nexus 6 presents a much better color rendition as well as amazing black levels. And if you never experienced an organic LED display before, whether it be on a smartphone or a TV or something like that, basically what it can do is turn off regions where there doesn't need to be any light, which is a huge advantage if you're watching movies and stuff at nighttime. You really get very immersed in the content that you're watching, and it's certainly the best type of display technology that's available right now. So both in terms of that kind of nighttime experience and daytime experience, it's a very bright screen, and couple that with that quad HD display, it's certainly the winner in terms of the display category here. Now moving forward, let's pop the hoods of these two bad boys and see what comes inside. Basically, in terms of processors, we have very powerful processors respectively. On the Apple side, we have the A8 dual-core processor that's clocking about 1.4 gigahertz, and for graphics, we are using a quad-core graphics processor, which is the GX 6450, and we have about 1 gigabyte of RAM. The Nexus 6 is rocking the new 805 Snapdragon chip, which is a quad-core processor clocked in about 2.7 gigahertz, and it has the new Adreno 420 GPU in there. Furthermore, we have 3 times the amount of RAM of 3 gigs for all your hardcore multitasking needs. Now, with all that kind of spec stuff out of the way, let's go ahead and take a look at some of my benchmark results to see which one is more or less the fastest phone. So looking at the results on Geekbench 3, we can see that in terms of single core threaded applications, we are going to get faster speeds on the iPhone 6 Plus side. It's getting about 1625 versus 1013, but on the multi-core score, we are getting faster speeds on that 805 chip on the Nexus, about 3139 versus 2913 on the iPhone 6 Plus. Now, we're going to be using 3D Mark benchmark to basically test out the graphical capabilities of both these two smartphones, and you can see that in terms of the ultimate benchmark score of 1080p, we definitely got very good results on both ends, both getting about 60 frames per second on the first test and about 48 frames per second. They're pretty much identical in terms of that. In terms of physics, though, however, we do find a higher FPS score, about 43 frames per second on the Nexus and about 29 frames per second on the iPhone. Now, if you quickly review the results of my Antutu benchmark, that you can see that they're basically both getting over 50,000 points, which is definitely very impressive, and certainly the top performing smartphones that are currently available right now. Now we're just going to do a quick boot up test between these two devices to see which one boots up the fastest, and if we speed up the time, we can see that the iPhone is slightly faster, but not by a huge margin. Now, just to do a quick illustration of a mobile web browsing test, we're just going to open up instafuse.com on both phones. We're going to be using Chrome on the Nexus and Safari on the iPhone, and it looks like right there the Nexus was just slightly faster than the iPhone in terms of Wi-Fi speeds. Now, both these two phablets offer some pretty good sound quality, so let's go ahead and take a look at the sound quality differences between the external speakers. Now, moving on in terms of internal memory capacities, we basically have a couple of different options on each model. You have 16, 64, and 128 gig versions on the iPhone 6 Plus, and about 32 and 64 gigabyte versions on the Nexus 6. In terms of connectivity, we have a dual bandwidth support for AC Wi-Fi, Bluetooth 4.0, as well as NFC capabilities on both devices. Now, interestingly, if you want to replace your wallet and use your phone as your wallet, both devices have different options for you. You can use Google Wallet on the Nexus 6 side and Apple Pay on the iPhone 6 Plus side. Now keep in mind that both methodologies are in the early stages of development, so there's a limited amount of retailers that are accepting either Apple Pay or Google Wallet, but as we progress into the future, more and more retailers are going to be accepting it on a global basis. Now, the whole reasons of why the Nexus phones exist in the first place is to give people the experience of using Android completely untainted. This is running the latest generation of Android Lollipop 5.0, and currently a lot of the Android phones that are available right now will be upgraded to Android 5.0, but this is the first smartphone to ship natively with the latest generation Android. So if you really want the purest experience of Android possible, this is the device for you. And there's a lot of different features that Android offers. It's an OS that's jam-packed with a whole bunch of new features that you'll discover pretty much every day, and it's very intuitive to use. It's definitely a lot easier than some of the skins that some of these manufacturers put on top of Android. So definitely a big plus for new users to Android. The cool thing about the Nexus 6 specifically is that the whole notification system that's in Android 5.0 integrates really well with the device. Specifically, I'm a huge fan of how the on-screen notifications comes up when the phone is in its lock screen mode. So it basically shows the time and your recent notification, and everything else in the screen is completely blacked out. So not only will that be good for battery, but it's a very subtle and sleek way to show your recent notifications. Now, iOS is certainly also much improved from iOS 7. You have a whole new notification system, as well as the ability to send and receive audio and video messages, which is very tightly integrated. Additionally, if you're in the Apple ecosystem, you have features like handoff and continuity, which make sharing your work, whether it be email or notes, back and forth between your iOS devices and your Mac, really intuitive and simple to use. Furthermore, you have Wi-Fi calling enabled with the iPhone 6 Plus, so you can take and receive phone calls on your Macintosh running Yosemite or even on your iPad. So you can potentially even use this as kind of a home phone or a phone number that's connected to multiple users potentially. And ironically, speaking of multiple users, that's one feature that Android has and iOS doesn't. The new 5.0 has the ability to sign in as a guest, or you can create your own Android account. So that's really great if you want to share your phone with your family, perhaps your kids. They can sign in as a guest or create their own account, and that way they're not really interfering with your own private settings. Now, we can go on and on between the different advantages of each OS, but it's really up to you to figure out which specific features you like the best. I think the key argument over here is that now the Nexus with the new Android 5.0 is just as intuitive to use and as user-friendly as iOS is right now. That's one of the big problems with having skins on top of Android, is you do complicate a lot of the aspects of the phones. And for example, some of the Samsung phones have TouchWiz integration, which certainly has a larger learning curve than what the iPhone 6 certainly has. And now we can finally show the Nexus 6 off to new Android users, and they won't be intimidated to actually use the darn thing. Now, taking a look at the cameras on both devices, we can see that both present some really excellent image quality. Taking a look at the front-facing cameras, we have 2 megapixel stills on the Nexus 6 side and about 1.2 megapixel stills on the front-facing FaceTime camera on the iPhone 6 Plus. Flipping them over, on the other hand, I'm proud to say that both cameras are really quite exceptional. We have optical stabilization on both rear-facing stills and video. Interestingly, both cameras have excellent LED flash capabilities. We have a ring flash system on the Nexus 6 and a dual LED flash system on the iPhone 6 Plus. Now, in terms of the stills capabilities, the iPhone 6 Plus can shoot up to 8 megapixels and the Nexus 6 can shoot up to 13 megapixels. We have also higher resolution video on the Nexus 6 of full 4K at 30 frames per second versus 1080p at 60 frames per second on the iPhone 6 Plus side. Now, the 6 Plus can record 240 frames per second at 720p mode, and certainly the Nexus 6 doesn't have that kind of slow motion capabilities. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the photos and videos of these two cameras to see which one looks best to you. Now, the last and final thing that we're going to talk about is the battery performance. Now, thankfully, because they're larger chassis phones, you are going to have room for a large battery, and they're both pretty good in terms of battery life. You're getting about 24 to 25 hours of 3G talk time. In terms of on-screen time, that's always going to vary between how much you actually use the phone and what your screen brightness and things like that. But generally speaking, I got about pretty much the same performance out of both smartphones. At times, I did find that the iPhone did a little bit better of a job in maintaining above 50% at the end of my 13 to 14 hour day, which is definitely good. That's mainly due to the fact that it's not powering a Quad HD display. Now, if you're a super heavy duty user, thankfully both devices will get you throughout the day, no problem whatsoever. One kind of advantage that the Nexus 6 has is the turbocharging mode, so you can actually charge it from all the way to 0 to about 50% within 30 minutes, or you can even charge it for just 15 minutes and get up to 6 hours of battery life. And this works really well. It's very impressive to see. It's the same kind of technology we saw on the Note 4, and it's excellent that we have it on the Nexus 6. And that's definitely a big advantage for those people who are power users, because unfortunately both of these devices do not have user replaceable batteries. But on that, guys, if you have any specific questions about anything I talked about in this video, please make sure to leave that on a comment down below. Also, make sure to check back to our channel for all the latest comparisons. We have a whole bunch of different videos coming out on smartwatches, obviously smartphones and things like that. And I'm actually going to be doing a top smartphones of 2014. So if you're interested in what the best smartphones were out and what we reviewed the whole entire year, definitely check out that video. That should be a really good one. But again, thank you again for watching, and we'll see you later. Take care.